Seal Show, y'all. I'm Amanda Seals. Today, we're talking about the Black family. We're not really talking about that. What we're talking about is what Florida Republican Byron Donalds said about Black families being, quote unquote, together during the Jim Crow era. And I am real lucky because other smart Blacks like me. And so they come on my show and they share their knowledge. And so joining me today is Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, professor of history at Boston University, also an award-winning New York Times bestselling author. You've read Stamp from the Beginning and others, and he is here with us today.
Hello.
Today. So you posted a message on Instagram, and I sent it to my team because I was like, we got to get Dr. Ibram on here because he's spelling it out for the people. And some people are not on the Instagram. And so I would love for him to come spell it out for us. And you, in your post, you said the media reported that Congressman Byron Donalds said that Black families were stronger during Jim Crow. He has denied saying this. He then was like, nah, what I had said was what I had said was is that you had more Black families under Jim Crow. And so you were clearing it up for folks, man. You were clearing it up for folks. And so I would love for you to clear that up for here. And less about necessarily him, but more really just recontextualizing for people what the Black family really is. Because I think there's also this real misconception that says if the father isn't living in the home, then it's not a Black family.
Yeah, I mean, I think first that comes from this sexist idea that the presence of a man inherently makes the family stronger.
Okay, so you're coming out swinging. Okay, I like it. I like it. Come on, come on with it. Let me just shut up.
There's some men who are abusive. So how is the presence of an abusive man making the family stronger? And then it's imagined that Black men are not as present as white men, which all the studies show is actually not the case. So then, people like Congressman Downs believes that somehow the Black family is not as strong because there's, quote, less Black men around. And he also made the case that wasn't the case during Jim Crow, but it's the case now. And he said it's the case now because welfare sort of has somehow destroyed the Black family. And what I tried to show, on social media is that actually that the group of people or the families that have received the most welfare in American history are white families. They received the, land from the Homestead Acts. They received money to go to school, to start businesses, to buy a farm from the GI Bill. They received the benefits of the New Deal. And he's not coming out here saying that it destroyed the white family.
Right.
But they're constantly trying to figure out ways to imagine that there's something wrong with Black families, Black people, Black women, Black men. This notion that somehow, quote unquote, government welfare destroyed the Black family, it allows them to do two things. First, problematize Black people, and then problematize government welfare.
Is there any legitimacy, though, to government welfare at one point? There had to be no man in the house. There was a no man in the house policy in order to get access to it, and that had deleterious effects on family building.
So, yeah, there was a policy certainly like that, and it certainly, and I think that was the irony at that time, particularly in the 60s and 70s. The very people who were, quote unquote, condemning Black families for the absence of some Black men literally had written a policy that made it more difficult for people who were receiving government assistance to have Black men in their homes. And so, right. I think that was a tragedy. Fortunately, I think many women who wanted to have their fathers, their children's father in the lives of their children, and the fathers who wanted to figured out ways to still be present, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I think certainly that was a challenge.
So, what do you feel like there is such a obsession with undermining the Black family? Because that's like that's a point, that's a talking point that they love to come back to. But these Republicans, they love to come back to that as one of their, like, hey, let's bring this back to the fore. And what is it about that that you feel like it serves as an effective tool that they keep coming back to?
I think it's because so we have a society of all these widespread inequities and injustices, and these are people who are trying to essentially blame Black people for why they're more likely to be incarcerated. So it's because we're quote unquote more dangerous.
Hmm.
Black people are more likely to be impoverished because we're quote unquote so lazy. And so then they say, well, the reason why Black people are so dangerous and violent and criminal like and lazy is because of the quote unquote broken Black family. So the broken Black family becomes this sort of explanation for why so many Black people in their imagination are violent and lazy. Um, and so once we push back against this idea that the Black family is broken, then they have to find another way to justify why they imagine so many Black people, are doing negative things.
So how does that actually? Because you just said, like, when we push back, what does pushback looking like look like?
I think first and foremost, it looks like us showing the data that actually finds that Black men uh, are actually more likely to be in the lives of their children when they're not married to the mother than any other group of fathers.
Mm.
It means that over the course of the 20th century, um, there was a decline. What people think happened is that there were more uh, single Black women who were having children. It's that married Black women were having less children. That's why the percentage in Black children being born to single uh, mothers rose, and and then that percentage really rose around the 60s and 70s. Now, why would married Black women? What would be happening in the 60s and 70s that would cause married Black women to be like, I don't want to have 10 kids. I don't want to have 15 kids like my grandmother
Hmm.
had? Something called feminism, something called reproductive justice, right? And so, what actually was a good thing is presented as this sort of negative thing.
Well, also their men were at war.
Yeah,
They were kind of busy. You're not really home to throw down if you overseas throwing down, whether or if you're in the streets of the South, right? I mean, the civil rights movement, then you have Korean War, then you have Vietnam War. I mean, there was a lot going on. Um, I just think it's really discomforting to not just see people like Brian Donalds, who is a Black person, saying this, but also to see how there has really been a commitment by so many Black politicians to really push these narratives um, at the behest of sometimes I'm like, is this really just for your own gain? Do you really believe this? So I guess my last question is, when you see folks saying this who are of our Black race, because I don't even want to say community anymore, but who are of the Black race, where do you think that they are leading, or what do you think they're really trying to accomplish with this narrative? Is it
I
really
think
just self-serving?
I think someone like a Congressman Byron Donalds, who's literally vying to be the vice president of
Is he really?
Donald Trump. He's one
Does
of
he really
the.
think that's going to happen?
I don't know what he thinks in his mind, but at least he's he's certainly.
Oh, bless
It's
his heart.
imagine that's something he's aspiring for. He's aspiring to for that position, and the the route to that position for a black politician is to demean and denigrate black people.
Period.
And Trump has spent his whole career doing that. And so I think it's deeply self-serving. Um, Now, does he still believe that? Does he still believe that the black family is destroyed? I could see some people thinking that he may do, and that may be why he decided to not marry a black woman. That may be why he somehow sort of thinks that his family was so much stronger than other families, right? Because
Hmm.
there's some black folks who think they're extraordinary, right?
Right,
They're
right, right.
exceptional. They're like these ordinary, inferior black people. So it's hard to sort of know,
Yeah.
what's really going on in his head. And I hope that's not the case. Like, I hope he doesn't think he's extraordinary. I hope he's not making relationship decisions based on people's races, but it's hard to know.
It's hard to know, but I always try to just consider because it's part of the reconnaissance of viewing your enemy. So But Ibram, thank you so much for the work you do in the classroom and also in the world and on the Twitter, because I don't call it X, on the Twitters. And we are in an era where social media ends up being a medium for a lot of people to get the intellectual nuggets that they need. And so I appreciate that someone like you uses that space to help dilute the foolery that is happening there.
Yeah.
We are